Hey folks, welcome to day two, business personal finance. We're going to be talking about installment loans. Remember on day one we talked about loans that you had to just pay back all at once, and those loans are fairly rare. Um, they come up sometimes, but typically you're going to have to pay back loans once a month over time. So maybe you pay that monthly payback amount every month for 3 years, 2 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. If it's a house, if you got a loan for a house, maybe that may be 30 years. So typically we have what we call installment loans. We also have this idea of what we call a down payment, and a down payment is an amount of money that you pay up front, and that money goes to the person who's selling the car, the washer and dryer, the house, whatever. And then the financial institution, the bank, the savings and loan, whoever's lending you the money is going to pick up whatever remains. That's going to be what you have to pay on until it's all paid off. And so I started this out just by taking a look at a car. So let's take a look at a Honda Civic. I think that's a pretty good little car nowadays. They're pretty reliable. So let's select one. I'm going to select this little hatchback. It's reasonably priced. If I look at it, it's one of the lower priced Civics. So I'll click it. And notice that you see a car here. It tells you what's the mile per gallon. It tells you what it starts at in terms of price. But of course, just because it starts at a certain amount, once you start changing the colors or building the interior or doing all this other stuff, it's going to add money. All right, that starting price is where it starts. If we click build, we can kind of go through the process of setting one up, choosing a color, choosing a what kind of suspension, stereo. If it has heated seats, look at this, heated seats, a moonroof. I'm just going to go with a basic one right here. And I'm going to skip all the process of like building it up and doing all that. I'm just going to go straight to estimate payments. And we can kind of see how payments work once we're in the estimate payments screen. So here's what I want you to see. There's lease and there's finance. Now for our purposes, we're really only thinking about finance. When you're leasing a car, if you're ever presented with that option, you're essentially renting the car. And you'll be renting the car for a period that's usually between 2 and 4 years. And when you rent a car for a long time like that, the nice thing is you're not really responsible for any wear and tear. You are responsible for if the car gets damaged or if you drive it too much. There's specific things in the contract about mileage, how many miles you can drive that car, and wear and tear. It's one thing if the door handle is, just got some average wear on it from you grabbing the handle, opening the door every day. Maybe it's got a few small scratches. That's fine. But if it has a dent that didn't get fixed, if it has excessive scratches, if the interior got chewed up because you had your dog in there and the dog went crazy, you are going to be responsible for paying for repairs to a vehicle like that if you lease it, because you're just renting it and they expect it to be in good shape when they get it back. In our case, we're not talking about leases and renting right now. We're talking about loans, and loans imply that you're going to go buy something. So when we look at a car such as this one, we're going to click the finance button. That's going to be us buying that car. Notice that you have a term. Now, when we talk about the idea of term, that is how long is the lease going to go for? How long are you going to rent it for? Or how long, if you're buying it, how long is it going to take you to pay it back? So if you select this screen in here, you can see that our options from Honda range from 24 months, which, because there's 12 months in a year, that would be 2 years, all the way to 60 months, which is 5 years. So it's defaulting to the 5 years. Let's take a look. 5 years is happening. Boom. Notice there is an annual percentage rate, an APR. That's how much interest, that's that interest rate you're paying. So when we look at our worksheets that we're doing today, we're going to see that interest rate. That's what this is. The higher that interest rate is, the higher the payment's going to be. Let's watch that thing change. Let's just add this. Let's make it go from 2.9 to 4.9. And I want you to notice, whoops, 4.9. Oh my gosh, can't get the 4 in there. Let's see if we can get that. 4.9. Oh my gosh, it's killing me here. Notice that the payments now are 448. Now, when we were at the original 2.9, oh my gosh, this thing is really killing me. Let's go to 0.9. Notice that they're 405. So as we lower our interest rate, our payments go down. As we have more and more interest, our payments go up. Why does that happen? Well, it's because we're having to pay the person we borrowed the money from more and more money. The more the interest is, the more money we have to pay the bank for the privilege of getting that money. I mean, the bank can't use the money. They gave it to us, right? If your rich uncle had the money, he can't use it. He gave it to you. So there has to be some compensation there. Also realize that if you're a bank or financial institution, you're taking a big risk. I just lent the money to you. What if you don't pay me back? What if COVID-19 comes, you lose your job, you can't pay? That's a big risk. Interest covers the risk, and it also covers that inability to access that money. Because let me tell you, a lot of times, like right now, let's be straight, I'm still working for the school district, but as many of you guys probably know, I own a business. I have 16 employees. I had to let them all go. My wife works at the business full time. We have zero income coming from this business. In fact, we're spending money all the time. I'm paying for my employees' health care insurance. Right? If I didn't have cash saved up, we wouldn't be able to do that. And we wouldn't be able to open our doors when this thing is lifted. So if something like this comes up and people are losing their jobs and they can't pay their bills, there's a real risk that you don't get paid back. And so interest covers that. It covers that risk. Now, does it do a great job at covering it? I got to say, if you were at a business right now and you lent money, you might be pretty dang nervous. And that interest may not be high enough to cover all the people that may not be able to pay. And so it puts people that lend money in a pickle. Okay? So we know right now that as interest goes up, your payment goes up. So let's look what happens with down payment. That's the other thing that we're talking about today. Down payment. That is a money that you're going to give Honda. You're going to say, hey, Honda, I know the car's 21 grand. You know, if I had tax, it's probably 24,000 bucks. I'm going to give you $2,000. And then the bank is going to finance whatever's left. So if the car is 24 and you give Honda 2,000, then you have to come up with another 22,000 to pay it. And the bank or the financial institution is going to do that for you. So they're going to lend you less money. If they're lending you less money, you have less money to pay back. The less money you have to pay back, the less the payments are going to be. So watch this happen. We'll just increase the down payment. Let's say we'll make this down payment $2,000. Look what happens to the monthly payment. It drops. So you can see that as our interest rate goes higher, our payment goes higher. As our down payment goes higher, our interest rate goes lower. We call this idea, and maybe you remember this from math class, when something goes up and another thing goes up, we call that directly proportional. When one thing goes up, like down payment, but the monthly payment goes down, we call that inversely proportional. Okay, so let's work through the worksheets that we have today. I'll give you a couple examples, then you guys can get to work, and we'll go from there. So let me pull up Cami real quick. And I've seen some people turn in some work. I'm happy to have seen that work got turned in, and using Cami is really, really great. So, you know, I would highly advise you do that. If you want to take a picture and send it to me, I'm fine with that too. Whatever works for you. But I'm going to work with Cami in here as we work through a couple of the sample problems, and then we'll go from there. So here's lesson 8.2. This is about the amount that we are financing. So this is really about the idea of the down payment. Take a look at the term right here, down payment. That's what we're really talking about here. So let's take a look. Flora Quinton is buying a new air compressor for her auto repair shop. It sells for $1,299. She makes a down payment of $199 and finances the remainder. How much does she finance? Remember the idea that the word finance, what does that mean? That means a loan. Okay? Finance means a loan. And so, how much does she get a loan for? Well, she doesn't get a loan for the full $1,299 because she made a down payment right here of $199. And what do we know about down payments? We know that they take away from the amount that she got a loan for. So let's take a look at how we would do this. We would go $1,299. We would subtract the down payment, and we would get the amount financed at $1,099. Now, I want you to see up here that the amount financed is the price minus the down payment. Notice that's what I did. The price minus the down payment, and that gave me my total. So here I'm going to just put my answer at $1,099. Right there. Okay, let's take a look at number 2. Beatrice Ruiz is buying a new office, furniture. So she's probably got a business buying some furniture. It sells for a cash price of $2358.60. The down payment is $200. What is the amount financed? This is just like number 1. Just like number 1. So let's take a look. We're going to highlight our various spots. Take a look at our down payment. Down payment right here. I'm doing that in yellow. Okay. Now, what do we have here? This is the cash price, right? So if we were to create a little text box right here, I can set this up. $23.58. And then I'm going to take away $200. What's that going to get me? $21.58.60. Where am I going to put that? Right here. $2158.60. Okay. This process is pretty straightforward. Nothing is too complicated. I'm going to skip down to number 4 because I want us to work through one that has a percentage in it. Notice that they always get a little more complicated. You got to give it a little more thought as you go down these. So let's take a look at number 4 because it's got a percentage in there, and percentage is always a little tricky and for some folks a little confusing. So let's just walk through this. Down payment. What is our down payment this time? Down payment is 40%. Okay, what does that really mean? Well, if we have a down payment of 40%, we're going to be taking 40% of this number. So let's do the math on that. We're going to start with our 5991.64. We're going to then multiply, I use the X for the multiply sign here, 40% sign. And that's going to give us some kind of answer. And it's going to be the right answer. So if I pull up a calculator, 5991.64 times 40% sign, enter 2396.56, or sorry, 65, but that 6 rounds that 5 up, so it's really 66 cents. So 2396.66. 2396.66. Okay, so there's our down payment. So our down payment is 2396.66. So if we think about amount financed, we have to take what? Let's go up to the top. Cash price minus the down payment. Okay. So down payment. was trying to highlight that in green, but I'm not being able to. But you get what I'm trying to do. So, text box right here. We take our 5991.64, subtract 2396.66, and we're given our answer. What is that answer? Well, let's just put it in the old calculator here. I'm going to start with 5991.64. I'm going to subtract 2396.66, 3594.98. 3594.98. 3594.98. All right. I've got two answers here. I'm going to take this number. I'm going to throw it here. I'm going to take this number. I'm going to throw it there. I'm going to let you guys do 3, 5, and 6. All right? Those will be for you on your own. Let's go to the second worksheet. And feel free to just, pause the video, do the work, come back. You can take a look at this where you left off later. Let's open up another file. This will be our second one for the day, and that is 8.3. So in A3, we're really talking about monthly payments. We're really talking about what that finance charge is, what's that payment, how do we break that down, where does the payment even come from? I mean, clearly, if I get a loan for 3 years, I got to pay back everything I owe, the amount I borrowed, plus all the interest, and it has to happen within that 3-year period. So we've got to figure out a way, how does that math done? I mean, you can use those online calculators. They kind of like put a number in your face, but how is that all figured out? You're going to do that in this worksheet. So let's take a look at a couple of problems here. So Lloyd and Linda Pearl, they want to remodel the dining room in their home. And if they do it, they're thinking, $68.90 is the cost. Okay? It's pretty cheap. They pay 30% of the cost up front. That's their down payment. Okay, because they're not going to get a loan for everything. They have some in savings. They're going to pull that out of savings and pay that up front. And then they're going to get a loan for the rest at that 12% interest, and they're going to pay it off in 48 months. So, first of all, we have to figure out what the down payment is. And hopefully you guys know how to do that now, because that was just like what we had in our last worksheet. So if I highlight 30% of the cost up front, that's our down payment. So I'm going to highlight these two things together, and I'm connecting them with that same color so it's easy for me to do some math. So I'm going to start with our cash price of $68.90, and I'm going to multiply by that 30% sum. And what I get is a down payment. So let's put it in the calculator. 68.90 times 30% sum, 2,067. So I will put that here. And then we can also put a text box here. 2,067. All right. So now, what's the amount financed? How much money are we actually borrowing? Right? When we see that word amount financed, that is the amount borrowed. Okay? So, what's that going to be? Well, we know it was $68.90 was the total amount of money that this was going to cost, and then we gave them $2,067, so we didn't have to borrow all that money. So if I do this math, what do I get? So let's open up a calculator. 68.90, and we subtract the 2067, and we get 48.23. So 4823. I'm going to put a text box here. I'm going to put 48. And notice that every time I do this, guys, I try to clean it up. Like my work, no problem. Like I don't care about dollar signs and commas. But when I put in my answer, I like to kind of clean it up. Make sure it's nice. Put your dollar signs in there if we're talking about dollars. If we're not talking about cents, there's no reason to put in anything after the decimal place that's theoretically here. Also, if you're doing dollars, remember always, that when we're talking about money, we're just rounding to the nearest cent unless it tells us otherwise. All right. So what's our monthly payment? This is kind of new, right? A and B, that was from the last worksheet. This stuff, monthly payment and finance charge, that's new. Let's try to figure this out. The beautiful thing about this setup is that all we're going to do is use a table. The great thing about this table is it's so trick. I mean, it's just silly how cool it is. Take a look. You look at the term in months. How many months are we borrowing the money? Okay. Then, so we find it. So 48 months. So that's where we're at. Then we look for the interest rate that we're paying. So we go back up to the problem. We find that 12% interest rate right there. I'm just going to kind of highlight this. 12% APR. Right? That's our interest rate. And now, if we find that, oh my gosh, that was not good. I don't want that to be yellow. Let's get rid of that. And let's go back to the markup and select green and see if we can get this in green. Yeah, all right. So then notice down here, right there, we have another green. So I'm going to just highlight that, highlight that, highlight this. In our table, what we're seeing here is we see both the interest rate and the term. Our term right here is 48. Our interest is 12. Notice I got 12, I got 48. The question is, where do they intersect on the table? So if I go 12, I'm going to go down, 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 down until I find that month term. So this is the number that we're after. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this in green. This is our intersection point. Whenever we do a problem like this, we're looking for that intersection point between the interest rate that we're paying and the term of our loan. So 263. Notice what it's saying here. It says for every $100 that I borrow, I have to pay $2.63 each month. So the beautiful thing with this and how we figure this out is we say, okay, fine. What we're doing is we are borrowing $4,800. Okay? So this amount is for every $100. So let's split the $4,893 into $100 chunks. How many $100 chunks does $4,893 represent? So I'm going to do $4,893 and divide by 100. Where do I get that 100 from? It's right here at the top of my table. Okay, so it's saying for every $100, how many $100 chunks is inside of that $4,893. So when I do that math, and you can get your calculator out, I don't need to. I'm going to tell you right now that it's 48.93 of those $100 chunks. So because of that, because there's 48.93 of them, I can then multiply the $2.63 times this, and I will have my monthly payment. So let's do the math. I can't do that one in my head. 48.93, and I'm going to multiply by 2.63, and I'm going to get 128.68. Notice the 5 will round this up to a 9. So 128.69 is going to be my answer. 128.69. Notice again, we are talking about money. Because of that, we're only going to the nearest cent. Dollar sign, 128.69. What is the finance charge? Well, notice up here we have an answer for that, and it's right there. What is the finance charge? It's the total amount repaid subtracted from the amount financed. How much did we finance? We got that right here. Amount financed is right there, 48.93. The question is, how much do we pay back? Well, think about this real quick, guys. Look, 128.69. That's how much you got to pay every month. How many months do you have to pay that back? That's the question you have to answer. And if we look down here, 48 months is what we're doing. So we're making 48 payments of 128.69. So let's just do that math real quick and see how much we've paid back. Text box. 128.69 times 48. I can't do that one in my head either. So let's whip out a calculator. 128.69. And we're going to multiply by 48. 6,177.12. Wow. Okay. 6,177.12. How much did we actually finance? Well, we actually borrowed 48.93. So we're going to subtract that, just like up here it tells us to. We're going to subtract that 48.93. And what do we get as our answer? Minus 48.93 equals sign 1284.12. What does that mean, guys? I'm going to tell you what that means. You borrowed $4,893. That's how much you borrowed. You borrowed almost $5,000. Took you 4 years to pay it back. You paid back all the $48.93 that you borrowed. But because you borrowed the money, someone else didn't have the use of it, and they risked that you wouldn't pay them back. So they charged you interest, 12% interest. In the time of the 4 years, not only do you have to pay back $4,893, but you have to pay back an additional $1,284.12. There's a cost to borrowing money. If you don't have to borrow money, great, don't. If you can borrow money at a cheaper interest rate, that would make the amount that you have to pay back extra much, much less. So that would be an advantage to you. If you could borrow money at zero interest, borrow it all day long. But remember that you have to pay it back. Interest costs money. And by the way, interest is related to how likely you are to repay your debt. So if you have a good record of paying your debt back, if you borrow money and always pay it back on time, never make a late payment, you will have lower interest. And your life will actually cost you less to live. I mean, think about it. We all have to buy a car sometimes, and we might not have the cash for that car. Well, those people that have a proven track record of paying people back on time, and always, just like they say they will, are always going to have a cheaper interest rate than folks that are higher risk, that maybe have missed some payments in the past, been late, that kind of thing. All right, guys, so that's all I have for today. Feel free, of course, as you go through these videos, watch, pause, do the video, that kind of thing. We'll have a Google Meet later in the day. I'll post that time on the classroom. If you'd like, have any questions or whatever, I'm happy to help out. Thanks.